Here are your insiders, Pierre, LeBrun, Darren, Dreger, and Bob McKenzie. Gentlemen, the NHL continues to live in a world of hypotheticals and maybes and hopefullys. Pierre, what's the latest as far as scenarios, not only in getting to a playoffs, but perhaps finishing the regular season in some format?
Well, I think that's been a bit lost in all the confusion of all the different formats, being debated and being thrown out there. And I think it's why NHL Commissioner Gary Bettman, according to several sources, on Monday's Board of Governors call, reiterated the league's preference and its priority to try and have some regular season games before a playoff. Whether that's 82, probably not, 78, 76, 74 games, all possibilities mentioned on that call. Now, there are a lot of reasons for this. One, of course, a lot of the players who on their own media calls have suggested they'd rather have some games before the playoffs, fear of injury and everything else after 4 months off. But also for the league, the fact that you play some regular season games so you can fairly and more normally decide who the 16 teams are that make the playoffs. Now, other people have started to talk to me in the last couple of days about maybe exhibition games as opposed to just regular season games, but that's a story for another day.
Dregs, I know you've been talking to the general managers. How do they feel about, look, if we get to a playoffs in a perfect world, there's likely to be reduced rounds, as in best of threes, best of fives. How do the GMs feel about those respective scenarios? Is there a favorite?
Well, the favorite, James, would be unanimous, and that would be 7-game series through 4 rounds. But it's an imperfect world, but a perfect time for a flash poll. 24 NHL general managers opted into the poll, given the scenario that you've just described. 20 of those support the idea of a best-of-5 series, ranging from 1 round all the way through to the conference final, but they want a 7-game Stanley Cup final. A couple of GMs said, no, you've got to leave it traditionally the way it is, 7-game series through 4 rounds. And then it gets interesting. One GM said a best-of-3 in round 1, a best-of-5 in round 2, and then best-of-7s for the conference finals and the Stanley Cup final. And then one creative general manager suggested 1-game series for the first 3 rounds, and then a best-of-3 in the Stanley Cup final. Grasping a little bit, but creative.
Of course, any of these are best-case scenarios. The worst-case scenario is they don't finish this season and they don't start next season on time. Bob, the CHL has already canceled the rest of this season. How concerned are they about the start of next year?
Well, they really have no answers. They would love to think that they're going to be able to start their regular season when it's scheduled. That is in September in the Western League, the Ontario League, and the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League. But they've got to put some contingencies in place that would allow for the possibility that maybe they have to start later. And never mind the start date, it's what the end date would be. So while the Memorial Cup is always scheduled for the last week of May, the CHL is looking at a potential scenario whereby the 2021 Memorial Cup, which will be held in either Oshawa or Sault Ste. Marie, still to be determined, would be held in the first week of June to try and give themselves a little more wiggle room if they do have to start the season later. And even if they do have a Memorial Cup in the first week of June, they could still spread the season out more. Nothing firm yet, but that's certainly something that's being seriously considered and looked at.
Hockey leagues, all sports leagues at the mercy of this virus and how quickly we contain it. This is Insider Trading.